Another one.
Says, what really is DevOps? So this one says, after a decade in DevOps world as a principal DevOps engineer, I find myself reflecting on the question, what is DevOps? We all have our own definitions and experiences, but I'm curious to hear what others in the community view it. For me, DevOps has always been more than just a set of tools and processes. It's fundamentally about culture. It's about breaking down silos, fostering a collaborative environment between development and operations, and driving a mindset of continuous improvement, automation, and shared responsibility. But I also feel like over the years, the term has morphed into a catch-all for various practices and tools, sometimes straying from its cultural roots. I'd love to hear your perspective. How do you define DevOps? What does it mean to you in your day-to-day work? Do you still see culture? Do you still see culture as the core of DevOps, or has it evolved into something else in your experience? All right. So that's a great question. Great question. And we're gonna start our clock. So for me, I don't because I guess me coming from like not being a in the DevOps field completely, I'm more of a DevOps adjacent person. So I've been doing like using DevOps tools and being deploying and stuff like that for almost 10 years now. Right. And honestly, like for me, I guess DevOps, a big part of DevOps is getting it done. Like how do we get the things done that we need to get done, right? And what tools do we bring into our processes to bridge the development aspect of it and the operations aspect of it, so that we're not wasting time, and we just have a smooth process, right? So I know people who became DevOps engineers are going to see it one way, but I think people who might not be the traditional DevOps engineers and stuff like that, like people who are more of a software engineering perspective, who are more of a QA perspective, and cloud infrastructure perspective, where DevOps brings all those together. We're like, all right, what do we need to do to get our process to work? I think DevOps is more on the side of people who might be setting up the infrastructure for all the other teams to use. So that's my take on it of what DevOps really is. Um, and I think the key thing about this, all right, you can't really you can't really define it per se, because the culture of DevOps, which I agree with what the person asking the question said, but the culture of DevOps is that things are always going to be shifting based on the needs and the time. So like when I first started using Docker, when I like the first there was like the course that I had, there was not really much. It was more of a conceptual thing, right? But then when I go back to that same course now, because with Udemy, like you have the course forever. So when I went back to the course, there's so much more information in that course because there's so much more knowledge on DevOps. There were no DevOps courses at the time, like 10 years ago. Almost 10 years, there were no DevOps courses. Now, if you see us on the Sunday live streams, we're doing so many different things with DevOps, left, right, like so many things. Like, uh, Alexis, correct me if I'm wrong. In your 2 weeks of using DevOps, you've been able to do so many different things with it, like starting up whole applications and things of that nature, right? And that's the point that I'm making. Everyone gets to participate in DevOps, but I think the development and operation side of things is only as good as the culture is set and the leaders in that section. So being confident in what you're talking about, as well as putting the tools and the process in place. I think nowadays, like especially like if somebody who's a principal DevOps engineer, being able to do the research, being able to give the right recommendations for how we're going to go forward as a company, as an organization, right? A lot of times, like in the teams that I'm in, we're like we want to use a particular tool or application or infrastructure, but the team that's responsible for most of the DevOps most of the DevOps of the company, they're like, okay, this is probably not the best route to go with this. This is what we've set up. This is our microservices template that all teams should be using. So they set up that culture, they foster that environment, and they are the pioneers on the best ways the best ways and the best tools that we should be using to have a successful working environment at the company. So to me, that's what I see as DevOps, right? It's coming from a outsider who's like DevOps adjacent, right? I mean, I know about Terraform, I know about Docker. We're going to be getting into Kubernetes. I've heard about Packer. I've heard about Ansible. Like I knew people who were using Ansible like 12 years ago, right? So I'm familiar with all these tools and concepts, but seeing how they all come together, I think the primary, like one of the primary roles of DevOps is to bring in a cohesive working environment so that things can run smoothly. I understand the culture part of it, right? But it's how can you make the things run smoothly, right? And Mitch says, and I'll just address this before we wrap this question up, right? Mitch says, let me take this off the screen. Mitch says DevOps isn't as popular as it used to be, which I agree with that, right? The but I would say DevOps itself still lives, but the role of that DevOps engineer is not necessarily as popular. And as Mitch says, popular might not be the right. I understand what you're saying though. I don't like. I think that the DevOps engineers they're going to be in certain industries. Like to me, I would say in more regulated industries where there's like that heavy separation of duties. But nowadays, the whole DevOps concept is passed along heavily through the whole organization, right? Everyone becomes responsible for DevOps, which might lessen that whole DevOps engineer role. But it depends on the industry because like I said, probably in like a pharma or banking industry, the DevOps engineer role is going to be a lot more prevalent because there's a lot. It's highly regulated, so they might need a separation of duties as well. So it just depends. It just depends. But I do agree. I do agree with what Mitch said. All right. So let's wrap that question up.
Yo, living in this chaos, I can see it clear. People slacking off, yo, I can feel the fear. Trying to make it big, but they just playing games. While I'm busting my ass, they just chasing fame. What's the point of grinding if you don't hold it down? Hear me out, we gotta get it right. No more lazy walks, we gotta reignite. Rise above the noise, push through the pain. Don't let this dream slip, let's break those chains. Got my eyes on the prize, but it's looking real grim. When you ask for the truth, they pretend it's a whim. Success ain't a joke, man, it's blood, sweat, and tears. So why you out here fronting, drowning in your fears? We all want the glory, but do we want the grind? Hear me out, we gotta get it right. No more lazy walks, we gotta reignite. Rise above the noise, push through the pain. Don't let this dream slip, let's break those chains. So step up, don't fall back, let's do what's true. It starts with me and you. Yo, living in this chaos, I can see it clear. People slacking off, yo, I can feel the fear. Trying to make it big, but they just playing games. While I'm busting my ass, they just chasing fame. What's the point of grinding if you don't hold it down? Hear me out, we gotta get it right. No more lazy walks, we gotta reignite. Rise above the noise, push through the pain. Don't let the dream slip, let's break those chains. But let's break those chains. Let's break those chains. Let's break those chains. Let's break those chains. Got my eyes on the prize, but it's looking real grim. When you ask for the truth, they pretend it's a whim. Success ain't a joke, man, it's blood, sweat, and tears. So why you out here fronting, drowning in your fears? We all want the glory, but do we want the grind? We want the glory, but do we want the grind? Yeah. So step up, don't fall back, let's do what's true. If we really want it, it starts with me and you. Yeah. So step up, don't fall back, let's do what's true. If we really want